All right. See me there. Y'all, look. Today's been challenging this morning. It's the day. It's been a challenging morning, but we're going to get this kicked off. Click live over here. Let me go live here. I'm already live there. Let's see. Let's see. Let me click it here and let's go live. All right. Right. All right. Let's see. Let me refresh over here. Yes. All right. Divine rising, everybody. It's been a challenging morning here. Trying to get this going. Let me go ahead and get this shared out. I know I typically go live at 8:30, but 8:30 just seemed like was not the time because I could not get this stuff to act right. So we'll go ahead and get this shared out. We're gonna go ahead and get this kicked off because it is Friday and it's gonna be definitely a wonderful day, an amazing day. I'm always gonna have a great day, even if I have some unpleasant moments in my day, but the day still remains a great day, no matter how I see it or how you see it, because we're gonna always have these challenges. No, my grandson didn't go to school. Don't know what that is, but he did not go to school. And a couple more places to share, and then we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. And I want to say thank you to my nephew. He did show up for me on the previous live that I could not seem to get nothing going. Uh, don't know what that was, but I think I shared the still stories. I don't remember. If not, we'll have it too on here twice. But in any event, look, go ahead and like I said, go ahead and get this kicked off. If you are tuning in with me now and this is the first time you see me come across your news feed or you see me come across your news feed and you got curious. So I am Shakitha. I am the founder and the founding architect of Quiet Queens Academy. I am based out of the Texas area, originally from Oklahoma. Um, so we're going to go ahead and get this started. If you are able to catch the title, this is Healthy Leadership Respects Boundaries on Both Sides. And so this week we have moved boundaries from something we simply announce into something we understand, communicate, and consistently honor. So, and on today, we take the conversation into leadership because healthy leadership isn't only about maintaining your own boundaries, it's also about respecting the agency, the capacity, decision, and the boundaries of the people you lead, right? All right. So, um, and a leader who teaches people to honor themselves cannot require them to abandon themselves in order to belong. Okay. And so this morning on Quiet Queens Morning Live, we are talking about what boundaries look like when you become part of leadership and culture. Because leadership should create capable people, not people who need permission to think, decide, or say no. And so, Quiet Queens Academy, leadership build independence. And so, I'm probably going to repeat this again, but we're going to go ahead and get into the conversation. And if you're tapping in right now, this week theme has been boundaries, and last week we talked about self trust. And so we are coming to the end of this week, and so we're going to go ahead and get into the topic of this conversation. And again, I would like to say divine rising to you, quiet queens. Um, and if you are tuning in with me, let me know where you're tuning in from. Just tap in on the comments and let me know. Um, but like I said, divine rising to you, quiet queens. We have spent this week talking about boundaries. So Monday we recognize what we will honor, what we're willing to honor. Tuesday, we examined what was actually driving the boundary. Wednesday, we talked about communicating without turning our boundary into a closing argument. And yesterday, we moved from words into behavior. And so today, I want to take this conversation beyond us individually. So, because there's another side of boundaries that becomes important when you lead people. It is one thing for me to want my boundaries respected, but what happens when somebody I'm leading tells me no? Hmm. Let's see. What happens when they need space? What happens when they ask questions? What happens when their capacity doesn't match what I want from them, what I wanted from them? That's where boundaries stop being something I only want for myself. They become part of how I lead. And so, just a message from the founder, which is, of course, that's me. One of the things that matters to me about leadership is independence. I don't want somebody to become so dependent on me that they believe they can't think or move unless I tell them what to do. If I'm teaching somebody to trust herself, then I also have to create room for her to actually use the self trust, right? And and that means there may be times when she makes a decision I wouldn't make. And you know what? And that's okay. And there may be times when she tells me no. There may be times when she asks a question instead of immediately agreeing. There may even be times when she hear or when there may be times when there may even be times when her boundary inconvenience what I wanted. And if I only respect somebody's independence when their choices agree with mine, I'm not really developing independence. I'm developing compliance. And so that distinction reflects the Quiet Queens operating system, which explicitly defines leadership as creating independence rather than dependence, and states that people must remain free to move or to make their own decision, right? And so we're going to tap into the core of this conversation, right? And so they're going to be like 3 to 4 points, and then we'll close this out. Um, so the first thing is leadership does not remove another person's agency. A title doesn't give us ownership over somebody else's decision. A team doesn't, a relationship doesn't, a community doesn't. Leadership carries responsibility, but the person being led still has agency, meaning that they have agency to do whatever they want to do, make the decisions that they want to make. And that's fine and that's okay, even if it does go against what my boundaries are or what my decisions are, because we are all individuals and we have our own individual choices and things that we want to do, and that is okay. And so they can ask questions, they can think, they can decide, they can communicate capacity, and sometimes they can say, no, that doesn't work for me. And it's okay because I know I say no, and I know it may sound crazy when I say no, that doesn't work for me. And even the person either understand to understand or they don't, and that's fine, right? So how we respond to that tells people something about the culture we're actually creating. So if someone tells you no, that does not work for me, and how we respond to that tells people something about the culture we're actually creating. I don't know, sometimes I can't say the word culture. Culture. Okay. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into point two. Excuse me. A person person's boundary is not automatically rejection or disloyalty. Think about it. I don't have any water in here. um, this is where leadership or leaders can unintentionally create pressure. And I say unintentionally because sometimes they don't know. Because sometimes when you're in a routine, you just continually to do things based on your routine. And so sometimes you don't really see or even understand that you are unintentionally creating pressure. Someone says, I can't do that today. And we hear they aren't committed. Someone asks for space and we interpret they don't care. Someone disagrees and we decide they aren't coachable. And I've heard that so many times, and it's crazy. It's crazy. That is not the case. I mean, it is simply not the case. And I think at this point, and I and that goes back to that routine. You in the routine of things, and when a person responds to you, these are some of the responses that you say or you think that is happening. But before assigning meaning to some boundary, we can become curious, right? Maybe they're communicating capacity. Maybe they're honoring another responsibility. Maybe they have information we don't have. A boundary gives us information. It doesn't automatically tells us the entire story. And so sometimes, and I'm going to say this, we have to stop in terms that people truly understand. Stop jumping to conclusions and stop interpreting what you think that's going on with a person and you absolutely have no idea. Instead of just saying, I'm just curious what's going on. Just ask. Don't make assumptions, right? And so the Academy Doctrine teaches us to observe before assuming and to distinguish genuine interest and alignment for what we may project onto another person's behavior. And the thing is that we hear this even when we are talking to our potential business partners, people that we're talking to about business, and because they didn't respond or something like that, and you go into this whole phase of, they wasn't serious. I mean, but then I talked about on yesterday how you can set things in place to make sure those boundaries are that you honor those boundaries, because whatever another person chooses, it is not your responsibility, right? So meaning that allow people to have their boundaries, and whatever their choices are, it's not your responsibility, but to make sure that you're honoring your own boundaries, right? Okay, let's get into point 3 here of the core of this conversation. Healthy structure creates clarity without controlling people. And I'm going to repeat that again because sometimes people don't understand control. Healthy structure. Healthy structure creates clarity without controlling people. And so we're going to get into that. Respecting boundaries doesn't mean leadership has no standards. Okay? This matters. A leader can establish expectations. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't do expectations. I absolutely do not do expectations, because the thing is, in the midst of putting an expectation in place, and then when a person doesn't do what you expect, even if they know what the expectation is, and they don't follow through on that expectation, then you get upset. But then here's the thing, the person to be upset with is yourself. So, me personally, I don't set expectations for people. I don't. It's expectation for people. I mean, I just allow people to do and make choices within their boundaries, right? And however, if I do have something set in place, I mean, and for instance, like, I'm not going to allow someone to come in and control, what it is that I do, because we're talking about control. Because the thing is, you can do this without controlling, right? You can create structures and clarity without controlling people, because the whole idea is we cannot control people. We absolutely don't have that type of power unless they give it to us. And I'm almost sure no one's going to give anybody that type of power. I mean, I've seen it in past tense, past times, but not too many people are going to do that. And so, when we talk about, things that matter, okay, a community can have standards, a business can have responsibility, a team can have commitments. But the difference is that people understand the structure and remain responsible for choosing whether they are willing to operate within it, right? And healthy structure says, this is what this environment requires. And again, that's another thing that I don't like to use is requirement, because no one needs to do anything. No one needs to do anything other than what they choose to do. But however, if you come into an environment, I would hope that you want to, go within the guidelines of what is within that environment. And so control says, you don't get to decide whether this works for you. Those are not the same, right? Quiet Queen teaches that structure should create stability and freedom while preserving dignity and personal responsibility, right? So let's get into um, the fourth thing of the core of this conversation. So the way you respond to boundaries teaches people whether it is safe to be honest with you. Hmm. So if people learn that every no produces guilt, it shouldn't. Excuse me. Every question produces defensiveness, it shouldn't. Every disagreement threatens belonging, it shouldn't. They may eventually stop telling you what they actually think. And and again, the way you respond to boundaries teaches people whether it's safe, right? And so you might get agreement, but you haven't necessarily created trust. A leader who can hear, I don't understand, I disagree, I need some time, I don't have capacity for that, without immediately making the person wrong, creates something different. She creates room for honest communication. And honest communication gives leaders better information. So let's get into the reflective, some reflective engagement here. And if you are watching this live, or if you are tuning in and watching this on the replay, um, let me give you something to think about here. Think about the environments where you lead, your family, your business, your team, your community, your relationships. What happens when somebody tells you no? What happens when somebody tells you no? What happens when somebody asks questions? And me personally, I love when people ask questions. I mean, and I don't mind a no, because one thing that I understand, no is a whole statement. No is a whole statement. So it doesn't bother me when someone says no. But when someone asks questions, I love questions because I'm genuinely curious. I'm curious to hear responses. I'm curious to even provide some enlightenment. Um, so I love questions. So what happens when somebody needs something different than you expected, right? And again, my interpretation of expectations, it always end up, if you expect it and it don't happen, you end up upset, right? But so I don't do them. So do people have room to communicate honestly with you? I love when people speak their truth, because I'm going to ask them for their truth. I mean, because the truth, and this is how you know when a person know who they are, because they can tell you who they are. They can speak their truth. They self trust themselves. So you know. And or do they have to manage your reaction before they can tell you the truth? So again, do people have room to communicate honestly with you, or do they have to manage your reactions before they can tell you the truth. And the thing is, like I said, especially if you're dealing with an adult, I mean, with adults or children, and I like to think, as an adult, there should absolutely be no reason that we cannot speak our truth and be transparent with the next person without it seeming like the next person is projecting on the other person their beliefs. And if they disagree, then it goes into a whole array of disagreement and conflict. And thing is, like I said, we can always have a conversation, but we will not have a confrontation, right? So the thing is, if in your mind, you're going to be in a confrontational situation, sometimes it's just, maybe just don't even ask the question, right? Just don't even have the conversation at all. um, and always, I say this, when you are asking questions or communicating, don't listen to respond, but listen to understand to understand. And I talked about that some weeks ago, about that same thing. So, but anyway, here's a practical takeaway for you because we're about to come to a close. The next time someone communicates a boundary to you, resist immediately interpreting what it means. Hear me, resist immediately interpreting what it means. Instead, ask yourself, here's 3 questions. What did this person actually communicate? Separate their words from your interpretation. Separate their words from your interpretation. 2, does their decision violate an established responsibility or simply differ from what I wanted? Those are not automatically the same thing. 3, can I respect their agency while still maintaining the standards I am responsible for? The third question is where leadership lives. You do not have to abandon standards to respect people, and you don't have to abandon people to maintain standards. So, meaning that you can still have your boundaries and still honor what it is that you want, even in the event if another person does not do it. I mean, because at the same time, we are not in position or we're not here to control the next individual. Because the thing is, it's whatever they do, whatever I do, is out of one another's control, right? And so, and if you choose to get upset about it, then I would say to you, if you upset about another person's decision, another person's boundaries, then I would say you need to do a self check. I mean, because thing at the end of the day, you cannot control the next individual's choices, decisions, boundaries, or anything. That you can only control your decisions, your boundaries, and honor that, right? And so, in closing, Quiet Queens, we started this week with our own boundaries. What am I willing to honor? Then we learn to discern them, communicate them, and support them with our behaviors. But leadership asks us to take one more step. Can I extend the same dignity to somebody else that I want extended to me? Can I allow another person to think, to ask, to decide, to communicate capacity, to have boundaries? And can I do that while still being responsible for the standards I called to steward? That's healthy leadership. Not leadership without structure, not leadership without accountability, leadership without unnecessary control, because the goal isn't to create people who can't move without us. Leaders build independence. And when the culture can eventually operate with clarity, responsibility, and dignity beyond the leader, we have moved from leadership toward legacy. And so that concludes this morning's live segment in this week's topic on boundaries. And so I will see you on next week with another topic for the week. I won't tell it to you right now, but stay tuned. And I would say this too. If you would like to join me live, just let me know. Just send me a message, and you can get on live. And pretty much, I know you'll be coming in and we'll come up with I will share the topic of what the live is, and then we can definitely have um, a live conversation on Quiet Queens Morning Live. And again, like I said, I appreciate you all coming through. Even if you don't stay for the complete ending. This replay will be up um, for about 30 days, so you'll have access to it for 30 days. And the lives are not actually, I mean, I don't really record them, but I do in my community. The lives will be in the community. If you'd like to join the community, I typically would not be shouting this out, but I mean, what better time to do it? We're at the end of the week. If you'd like to know more about the community, I would just say, or if you want to just explore Quiet Queens Academy, just go to Quiet Queens. No, go to academy.quietqueensacademy.com, and you can explore the academy. And I would really encourage you to actually um, take the assessment. So if you are going to be looking at it from your device, it's going to be right there at the very top of the right hand corner of the screen. If you take the assessment, go through the assessment and see what type of builder you are. Whether you be an architecture, connector, momentum, and I just I can't never remember the fourth one. But just go see what type of builder you are. And once you take the assessment, you will get an email if you put in your information. You'll get an email with your results. It will come up in a PDF. It will be two PDFs that will come up. But when you click on them, it will give you your results and it will explain what each one of those profiles mean, right? And so, again, I appreciate you all tuning in with me and staying with me through the week. I am Shakita, and you all have a divine day, and I will see you next week. Enjoy your weekend.